Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and welcome to another episode of Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Joshua, and it is, what do you think of Z-Min's rework of Montaigne? Okay, I don't know how this Z-Min guy keeps doing it, but he has some of the most creative reworks that I've ever seen. So the way that this one works is that Monty would be changed where he can now no longer use his secondary while using his shield. Now you might be thinking to yourself, wouldn't that just make him useless? Like, why would anyone want to play as him? They've already nerfed Monty over and over. This seems like it'd be the nail in the coffin. And I would agree with you. But the twist on it and the way that it makes things interesting is that Monty now would have the ability to plant his shield onto the ground, and then he would have access to a DMR. One of the issues I've always had with Monty is that he enters into the objective, he finds a corner, and now you have to deal with him off to your side and the person that's going to come through the doorway. And if he times it right and he knows what he's doing, he's going to apply constant pressure, and you never know when he's going to drop that shield and take you out. And so by making this kind of change, you're no longer going to have those kinds of annoying problems. The thing is, though, is that this could be making him even more powerful in these kinds of situations. Because you plant down that shield, you're essentially giving offense a deployable shield that they can use to constantly wiggle peek out from and get a headshot. And so if you're on defense and you see the shield down the long hallway, what do? I mean, maybe if you have an impact nade, you can take it out. And Z-Min does mention a melee and an impact will be able to drop this thing down. I'm assuming he would have to pick it back on up, or maybe it's just outright destroyed. That would be one way of handling it so that you can't just block off an access route completely. But what do you do when an Ashe is behind this shield and can quickly peek around, have peeker's advantage, and take you out when you're trying to push and defuse the objective? That sounds like a nightmare. On top of that, I also worry about him entering into the objective like we just talked about, finding a corner that is somewhat secure, planting down that shield, and now you're having to deal with someone who was on the objective in a side of the room that normally would have been defensible, but now you got a guy with a DMR. Like, that is also not going to be really all that easy for defense to work around. And so in general, I do think this is a really cool idea. Conceptually, shields sound like they'd be appropriate for a game like Rainbow Six Siege, but as we've seen over the years, Ubisoft has had a really difficult time balancing them because they just come with their own issues. And so this might be one way of trying to work around those, but at the same time, it could come with its own problems. The next question comes from Alex, and it is, what are your thoughts on the rumor that Battlefield 6 will have weather levolution events? Okay, I gotta admit, the first time I learned about this, I was a bit skeptical. It does sound awesome if a tornado spawned and it was able to dynamically go through a couple of buildings and everything gets destroyed, like throws things everywhere. That sounds like it could be awesome. But how often is that gonna happen in the middle of a battlefield? Like, it doesn't seem all that realistic. And while I know we don't wanna use realism in a video game, they're supposed to be fun, if this happens like all the time on every single one of the maps, like that could get old pretty quickly. The thing is, though, is that we've now learned from another supposed leak, and so take this with a grain of salt, is that these countries in Battlefield 6 have somehow been able to create weather weapons. It sounds ridiculous now that I'm saying it, and they're using that to take each other out. And so that does kind of lend a little bit more credibility to why a tornado would all of a sudden just descend on the battlefield. Like that kind of lends a bit of that, I guess, sort of realism, even if it isn't all that realistic. Overall, though, it is going to have to be a wait and see. It could be really cool if it happens every so often and it is dynamic. That could be a lot of fun. But at the same time, if I'm in a building and all of a sudden something like happens on the battlefield and a tornado just destroys everything around me and I get taken out, that could also be quite annoying. It's gonna have to be a balancing act. And so I'm very excited to see what DICE has been working on these last couple of years. The next question comes from Ryan, and it is, what are your thoughts on the Jaeger nerfs? It seems like Ubisoft is trying to make him useless. Well, I don't think we need to be extreme and say that Ubisoft is trying to make Jaeger useless. Yes, he's getting more nerfs. Does he deserve them? Probably. I think the problem that Ubisoft has kind of put themselves in is that for some reason, they decided that they were going to make at launch a character that had 3 speed, had an ACOG, one of the strongest, if not the strongest weapons on defense, and on top of that, he had one of the most versatile and beneficial gadgets as well, and they put that in all in one character. Of course, he's going to be overpowered. And then on top of that, they didn't nerf him for like years. I mean, yes, they did get rid of his ACOG, but then it took a significantly longer time for them to make any more changes. And so the community got really comfortable with this powerful operator on defense. Now, some people might say it's just simply because of his gadget for why his pick rate is so high. And that's a good argument, but I don't think that's the full picture anymore. We have alternatives like Wamai and Aruni that fulfill that same role, but they're nowhere near the 95% pick rate that Jaeger has. 95%, even after all of the changes. So it has to be something else. And I think it's just because his weapon and his kit in general is just so powerful. And so is Ubisoft trying to nerf the power of Jaeger? Well, obviously. Are they trying to make him useless? No, I think they're just trying to get players to maybe play another operator. You don't always have to play Ashe and Jaeger every single game. There are other characters. I think that's really what Ubisoft is trying to accomplish. The next question comes from Matt, and it is, with crossplay becoming part of the video game norm and Call of Duty popularizing it for AAA games, do you think it's essential for Battlefield 6 to have it? If so, how hard or how would they balance it? Well, I don't think it's essential that Battlefield 6 has crossplay because only until recently, every other video game known to man hasn't had this functionality. And so I don't think that it's a requirement for Battlefield 6 to do well. With that said, I do think that crossplay is going to be the future for most online video games. There will be some exceptions, like exclusives and things like that, but I think that not only does it benefit players, but I think publishers and developers are also realizing how this is going to improve and benefit them in the long run. For example, the player base on PC for the most recent Call of Duties, I think has sustained itself and not withered away and kind of disappeared like it normally does a couple of weeks or even a couple of months after the launch of a new game because of crossplay. You're not having to wait in a queue for a significant amount of time on PC because you have a larger player base to pull from. This is good for the players, but also because of the modern day games as service, they want people continually playing their game throughout the year and not just disappearing because that's going to be beneficial for them as well. And so while it remains to be seen how Battlefield 6 is going to be handling things, I would not be surprised whatsoever if they went down this path. Now, how will they balance it? Probably very similar to Call of Duty. Controllers and people on console are going to get aim assist so that they can compete with mouse and keyboard, and maybe they will allow you to have different cues depending on if you are using a controller or if you are using mouse and keyboard. But that is only just a guess. The next question comes from Shane, and it is, do you think that the yellow ping on camera should be removed? I find it to be one of the more annoying aspects recently introduced into this game. So I understand why Ubisoft introduced the Z ping on cameras because it's trying to facilitate teamwork. They're trying to get people that don't have a microphone to be able to communicate with their team quickly and efficiently without actually having to rely on a mic. And that sounds awesome in theory. But in practice, and I don't know if they just haven't added the audio effect in the game. I never hear it anymore. It was on the technical test, but it just results in these really frustrating moments when you're on the receiving end. They know exactly where you are because their teammate Z pinged you. They got that yellow icon directly below your feet. They round the corner and take you out, or they get you through a wall. That I don't think is a good feature. And so I do think that Ubisoft's heart is in the right place on this one. I think they need to make some improvements, increase the audio, or actually bring that chirping noise into the game. I don't know what's taking so long on that. Make it very obvious because that information should be available. If I'm getting pinged normally by a camera, I can see on my screen that I'm being spotted. You can't see that with the yellow ping. You need to give the person on the receiving end some of that information, or it's just not fair. Or just outright remove that functionality from cameras. Keep it in for operators, that's fine, but just not for cameras. But obviously, that is just my 2 cents. Yeah, guys, that is what it for today's episode of Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. I've made some changes. You may have noticed throughout today's video that things are slightly different, and I'd like to get your feedback on that. Do you think that enhances the video? It's a lot more effort on my end, but I've been having a lot of fun with it, and so let me know your guys' thoughts down below. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.